All right. Hello, 14 of brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is April 1st, 2025. Yeah, it's April Fool's Day, but there is no fooling in today's teaching. It's it's us just continuing to seek and search, diligently drawing closer to understand the Lord better and to bring about more and more of his revelation and just keep drawing closer to lift each other up, to strengthen each other and keep going until the time comes, which by the way, we'll touch on a couple points of it as we get more into the second half of tonight. But we're going to start tonight with the Gog and Magog war. And many of you will have already seen this teaching, but there's a lot of people that haven't that are here in the ministry that are newer. And the reason I wanted to touch on it also is because there's been a lot of chatter about it lately. And what I want to do is I want you guys to see. Now, I know many of you guys have already seen it, all right? But we're going to touch on it because there's a lot of new people since we've talked on it. And I want you guys to see just how crystal clear the understanding of where this Ezekiel 39 war is going to take place. Okay, the war of Gog Magog that people like to talk about, because it's so confusing when you hear where people that teach on 7-year tribulation is. Now, when I say this, I don't want you to take it as in, oh, I'm just smashing them, I'm just beating them because we know everything and they don't know anything. That's not it at all. I want those who are here growing in the understanding to be able to see it and understand it for themselves, so that if other people are watching 7-year teachings, if they're watching other people teaching on the Gog Magog war that's about to happen, they won't be confused by it. Okay? None of the people that teach on 7 years and mash everything together in the tribulation, I never ever, it's not about ripping on them. Okay? I appreciate what they do, but I understand that they just haven't yet been revealed the understanding. That's it. Okay? We've been blessed to receive understanding as has never been revealed before. And we've been doing it now for getting close to 8 years. Is that crazy? Getting close to 8 years. So that's what we're going to keep doing. We're going to keep diligently seeking and searching and do what we can to reach more people. You know, and you want to hear something crazy about reaching more people. I just had a conversation, when was it? Yesterday, Monday, with our brother Steve in Uganda. Man, oh man, I tell you guys, if if anybody had any clue what these guys go through in Uganda, it would devastate you. I couldn't imagine being in Uganda going through what these guys go through. The living conditions for the vast majority, the sicknesses and the illnesses that fall upon their families on a continuous basis. The wars, because they'll travel for ministry that we help Steve with, right? The ministry in Uganda that we support, and they go into the Congo. And of course, there was all those beheadings that had taken place of Christians over in the Congo. Some of them had fled. He had 9 guys that were living in his church in Uganda. He had to turn them over to the Uganda government so that they could put them in refugee camps. But they were living in the church for several weeks. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what these guys go through, these brothers and sisters go through. It's I don't think we can really grasp it. You want to talk about a people that can endure what's coming in tribulation? You know, if they were to remain behind to serve the Lord, my goodness, these would be the men and women, hands down. They're already experiencing it, but I'm hoping they don't. I'm hoping that they're the ones that get to go to pre-trib and that the rest of us would experience it so that we can do our part as well, because it's wild. It's absolutely incredible. And I've talked to Steve a couple times about these things. I mean, even when it came, to the support we send them, we were talking about allocation and doing this because sometimes the months are very tight as to how much support we're able to send to Steve. And of course, if you want to support, you can click right here on the link, go to our PayPal. Our address is there if you wanted to send a check or something in the mail. You can also find the link in the description box under the videos. or on the ministryrevealed.com website as well. And you can find out some info about the ministry over in Uganda. But I mean, for the bills and the church and Bibles and printing books for Cindy's testimony and the Ministry Revealed book, it's incredible. He has guys, he says, calling him now. He has pastors from all over Uganda and surrounding areas that he says he takes, I think he had said like 8 or 9 calls a day of people wanting more of the materials. That's how powerful it has reached over the last 2 years and 2.5 years just about now that we've been working with Steve and supporting him and getting not only to help him bring more people to Christ, which is first and foremost on the list, but also to help them understand the nearness and the revelation of the word to better understand the scriptures. He has pastors and these guys calling them from all over the place on a daily basis. And some of them are calling and asking just to be able to see if they can print the books themselves. That's how powerful it's been. Even in the prisons, guys. Even in the prisons, the books are being passed around. The Cindy's Testimony, of course, they got the Bibles, but the Cindy Testimony, the Ministry Revealed book to help these people understand better and to ready for the time of the end, it's going everywhere, guys. And now, because it's been quite tight for a bit, they're no longer printing as many books, although they've still printed a few hundred since January and double that for Cindy's book because of the testimony. But they're now using tracts. You know, you've heard of people give out tracts, you know, like they'll print out either like a piece of paper or on like a postcard type style, and they'll put points on it in the front and the back to pass out to people. I mean, they're doing everything, running themselves ragged. Steve's story, guys, I I know a little bit of it, and I barely know any of it, and I couldn't imagine living it. I could not imagine it. Being kicked out because he became a Christian and living in the streets, eating 1 meal a week. 1 meal a week when he was living in the streets. Could you imagine what that would do to your body? Hence, a lot of these things that come upon him now and many others. It's unbelievable. So I say that just because, one, I have just had a conversation with him yesterday, and it's always so powerful, and it's always so uplifting because of the excitement and the joy of how appreciative they are that we support them there to do the Lord's work there, to be the hands and feet that we can't be in that area. And they're so appreciative. It's unbelievable. And the excitement of the testimony and the ability through the book to be able to understand the scriptures better has empowered tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, he said. That's the impact we all have a part in. And so with that, I also bring it up to say, if you are able to support, please support whenever you can, whether it's today, tomorrow, you know, continuously over these next couple of or over these next several months that we still have, you know, and if it comes sooner, then hey, it comes sooner. But let's please continue to do what we can to support the ministry and to help reach more people. All right. And the other thing in relation to tonight's teaching, as I mentioned in the second half, as it'll flow and build into it, we're going to touch on something that I talked about over the years, but there was one thing that would catch my attention a couple times. And I just thought that, well, that's just the way it makes sense. That's kind of how it's lined up. But what you're going to see tonight when we get to that point is based on where we are now and going this extra about 10 months or so that we know it's in Aquarius, the Bible literally told us, then what you're going to see is something that's going to fall in line that wasn't in line before. It appeared like it could be, but there's 2 points to it. One point was, and the other point was almost. And I think we're going to be able to see that here tonight. And as I said, I'm gonna keep working on remember the 2 calendars, right? The sowing and reaping compared to the beginning of the year with Nissan. we're going to work on that. And I've got a bunch of things to go through. And our brother Jake had sent me a bunch of things that he had gone through. And so we're going to go through that. But those are the two things. So we're going to go into this Gog and Magog. We're going to understand it better and show how clear the confusion is when people are teaching this belief of the Gog and Magog war coming first. Okay. And then that will lead us into the second part and this whole conversation of when the Lord comes on the 8th day and the equivalent of it in the Gospel of Luke. Okay. And what it means about the years. So that's what we're going to get into. So with that, my copy as usual. And as usual, you guys know, I always want to go to this playlist. Anybody that's new to the ministry or newer to the ministry, I always recommend coming to this intro series. There's 15 videos in it. I don't recommend you have to watch all 15. To get started, all you need is the first 4. You can come from YouTube at the playlist, Intro to the End Times Revelation, or you can go to ministryrevealed.com and from the menu, click Intro and watch the first 4 videos there. When you click on this one right here, it will come up like this. And these are the first 4 teachings we always recommend right here. This first one is a 22-minute intro to give you a little insight as to what the next 3 are going to go into. The second one is a 30-minute Bible study of what we call who the Gospels are speaking to. And it is the key to prophecy. It is the absolute key that opens, that unlocks and opens the door for you to understand prophecy as you have never, ever understood it before. Everything will start to make sense that you had questions for. Okay? What it is you're going to see, and this is just an intro. And in this 30 minutes, you're going to see that Matthew, Mark, Luke of the Synoptic Gospels, in the end, plays out as Luke, Mark, Matthew. The last will be first, the first will be last. And you're going to see that the differences within those Gospels, in the same stories that have different counts or different words, yet are supposed to be the same story, reveal all of this insight into prophecy. It will blow your mind. And one example I always use is if you go to Luke's Gospel, you're going to see before going to the cross, Jesus was arrayed in a gorgeous robe. The Strong's Concordance means white, radiant, beautiful, like a bride's gown, right? In Mark, it said he was arrayed in purple, and in Matthew, it said he was arrayed in scarlet. Well, it just so happens that purple and scarlet are the colors that the woman riding the beast wears. Ah, very interesting, right? You're going to be able to, that is a snowflake on the tip of the iceberg. And this 30 minutes is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got more than one 3-hour teaching that goes into several of these differences, and we've gone into several dozens of them to prove it out. Every single time it equals the same thing. A group connected to pre and a remnant who serve, the mid, and a group that are chosen from them to serve in the trumpets, and then at the end, a group that will serve to the millennial reign after the Lord returns feet down. And what you're going to see is that pre, mid, and post are all true. And if you decide you want to go look into that, you can come into this one down here later. And along the way, when you watch some of these older teachings, right, some of them are a few months or a few years old. And you might hear some where I'm talking about the 70th year and believing that the tribulation was at that time. Obviously, you can disregard. It was just a growing time, right? We're trying to discern and understand these things as it comes to pass. And I now believe we do because we're now at the final option for a year count, which we've talked about in the last teaching and we'll briefly touch on in the second half here. So when you do listen to those, pay attention to the words of the revelation and what's being said, and don't focus so much on the date or the time frame that's being spoken about. This one right here, in the second teaching, this is the one that usually gets most people to say, oh, forget this. This guy's lost his mind. Because we've been taught for 200-300 years that the tribulation is only 7 years. Well, it's not 7 years. It's a period called 14 years. It's 7 years for seals and 7 years for trumpets. And there's a short period of time called above. The above is the pre-trib, the period of above, and then 7 years of seals and 7 years of trumpets. Okay? That's how it plays out. And it sounds crazy, but I didn't go looking for this. I didn't know it existed. It started with the revelation of these differences in the Gospels, and the differences in the Gospels revealed the revelation of the end of days being the 14 years and above. And it went over the years, it built up so much that we were able to prove it in the story of the creations. It's absolutely phenomenal. So this again is just a 30-minute intro. All right? And then you'll get to the big one. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes called It's All Because of Matthew. Just like the title says. And it's the whole reason. How was it that these differences in the Gospels weren't understood for the time of the end? Well, one, because it wasn't yet time. And two, because everybody had been taught foundationally in the Gospels from the Gospel of Matthew. That's why everybody goes to Matthew 24, Matthew 24, Matthew 24, like it is a broken record, because they never understood why the differences in Luke and why the differences in Mark weren't the same story as what was going on in Matthew. They're similar, but they are not the same. And we prove it out. The answer is because we've all been taught for hundreds of years from the Gospels to go to Matthew. And so when somebody sees something in prophecy, they equate it to only 7 years. And they say Jacob's trouble is 7 years. Well, they're right. That's Matthew's portion. Unfortunately, they've missed the Mark portion. And that's the 7 years of seals. Pre, mid, post are all true. And it ends all the debates of which one is true, because they're all true over 14 years in a period called above. It'll blow your mind. Everything is from Scripture. Everything. Absolutely all of it is taught to you from Scripture. And once you have that foundation down, then you can start going into everything, like the complete discourses. It'll blow your mind. We can show you the discourses in order, going from Luke's to Mark's to Matthew's, and show you the revelation of the 14 years and above for the end of days. 7 churches of the end of days, same story. The tribes in the wilderness, you guessed it, the exact same story revealed in the tribes and how they're laid out in the wilderness. It's beautiful. And every time we find more revelation, it continues to prove out the exact same storyline. Don't believe me? Just go start with the playlist and you'll see it for yourself. All right? So as we go into this and we start talking here about Gog and Magog, or we should say the Gog of Magog war is what really it is. It's not to bash these other channels. We understand that they haven't understood the revelation. Okay? They haven't understood it. They're stuck in Matthew, and they're stuck in a 7 years because of Matthew. And what does that mean? That means it's as if they're looking from the end of Mark, which is mid-trib, and they've got 7 years of Matthew's, which remains. That's where their eyes are. And you're going to see that revealed in this, and you're going to see not only how clear it is, but you're going to see how clearly contradicting their teachings are in believing that a Gog and Magog could come first when it's the Lord who destroys the enemies. Hello. How could the Gog and Magog war come first? Are we to believe that they believe the Gog and Magog war comes first and the Lord comes and destroys them, and that's the time of the pre-trib? You see, there's no way they could actually believe that, because we can show what it means of that timing of the Lord's coming. It's not the post-trib, right? We can show you what it is, and it completely disproves the Gog and Magog war coming at the beginning. It makes it impossible, let alone what the rest of the words in the scriptures reveal. Because there are others, and that's why I say not everybody believes it's starting with the Gog and Magog war. Some people believe the Gog and Magog war comes at the end of the 7 years of tribulation, at the coming of the Lord feet down on the Mount of Olives. But that's clearly wrong as well, and we understand that because of the wording in the scripture. So you're going to see how we're going to build there and why we're going to build this way, because everything here tonight is in a starting point in Daniel chapter 8. You'll see how it all comes together in relation to what we're talking about here in Daniel chapter 8, connected to the final portion that we'll talk about as well. So you'll remember we've taught on this with Daniel chapter 8 in relation to the horns, okay? So let me go to Daniel chapter 8. This program I use is called eSource. And the reason I use it, it's awesome. It was free when I signed up for it many years ago. Maybe it's a few dollars a year now, like 5 to 10 at most. Maybe it's still free on PC. I don't know. You can download all the different Bible versions. I am a King James guy because we can prove the validity of it, like Truth in the Bible, or what, I can't remember the guy's name. He proves it as well, right? And we proved it as well. The KJV is the absolute truth of the Word of God. It is the one to use, all right? But I also use the KJV Plus. And as you can see, it's called the King James Version with Strong's numbers. So you end up getting the Strong's Concordance numbers so they could be right at your fingertips, all right? And with that, that is what will expand your understanding of Scripture. If you dig in to the definitions and the meanings of those words and where else those words are used and what's the root word of it, you will explode in your understanding of Scripture like never before. So now, you'll remember when we talked about this maybe a couple of years ago, and we've shared on it once or twice since then. You'll remember that the story of Daniel 9 is the story of the horns. Now, what are these horns? They're mountain peaks, right? They have to do with mountains. They're not the horns of the beast that has the 10 horns. These are horns that literally mean mountain. So this is why something like this is also so important, because you're seeing here that the revelation in having the Strong's Concordance at your fingertips is revealing to you that these horns are actually mountains being talked about, compared to where, when we go into Daniel 7, which we'll again go into in a little bit, and you go to the beast that has 10 horns, look at this. It's not the same horn, okay? These are literally like cornets, the blowing horns, right? So when we're in Daniel 8, we showed the revelation of these horns and what they represent, okay? We saw that there were 2 horns, and then there was the one horn, and then the one horn defeats the 2, and then the single horn breaks off, and then 4 more come up in its place, okay? 4 more come up in its place. And then out of one of them comes another one. How many horns do you have? You have 1, 2, that's 3, plus 4, that's 7. And from among the 7, this 8th one comes up. This little horn is not the little horn of Daniel chapter 7, because these are the mountain horns. Okay, these are the mountains. So we've taught on this before, and it's important to understand because it's connected in relation to how the church teaches us this belief by most that the Ezekiel 39 war is what happens near the beginning. And if that's the case, then all of these other horns they disregard. Do you know why they disregard it? Because they believe because it already happened, it's not connected to coming again. So what do they believe? This great horn that was broken, and then 4 more came up from it. Well, of course, it was what was it Alexander the Great? I think it was, and then the 4 generals that took their portion. So because it's already happened, they think, oh, that's it. It's already happened. We're just waiting for now a little portion of time, and then the rest of the story will play out. That's not what it is. Remember in Ecclesiastes 1:9, what was shall be, what is shall be. And that's where we've used many times the reference over the years that from creation to Christ is the was, from Christ to the moment of the pre-trib is the is, and from the pre-trib until the end is the is to come. So the was the stories and things and how they played out in the Old Testament will take place again in typologies in the is to come. And the is shall be, meaning the things that took place from Christ until the moment of the pre-trib, and the events in there, like again the 7 churches, will play out again in typology in the is to come. Was, shall be, is, shall be. And this is no different. This is no different. This is the story of Revelation chapter 17. Because we're talking about what? 1 plus 2, that's 3, plus 4, that's 7. So there's 7 mountains as horns, but an eighth one comes from among the 7. You guys remember this, right? Something we've taught on a number of times. And it's right here in Revelation chapter 17. Because the beast had what? The beast had 7 heads. Well, what are these 7 heads? We don't even need to go look at the Strong's Concordance. The 7 heads are what? 7 mountains. And the 7 heads, what do we see? It also had 10 horns. 7 heads and 10 horns. Yet, from among one of them, an eighth one comes, right? So that's the type of thing that we're talking about. We've understood these things. Okay? We've taught on this. And if all these things are still to be played out, then why are we to believe that the image of Nebuchadnezzar and the events that took place in history wouldn't have a typology in how they're going to play out in the years to come? Of course they are. But this is one of the reasons that the church doesn't grasp this part, and they're just waiting for this portion of the 10 horns. Like all of these other horns that are mountains aren't still to be played out in the time that we're in. So here's the example. When we go to Daniel 7, we see that there was 4 beasts out of the sea. The first is a lion. I still believe that's Syria, right? The second beast is a bear. We know that the lion from Syria is going to be attacking Jerusalem at the end of the above portion from Luke, at the start of the 14 years, which is the red horse rider, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Okay? It'll begin at Jerusalem. We know there are events that happen over the 50 days that come first, and then we've got the bear coming. And that's when it's against all nations now start breaking out after it starts against Jerusalem. And then you've got leopard. The leopard is most likely throughout Europe, maybe Germany involved in that whole region, and they'll be essentially the control center. And then the beast gets his power. Okay, this is the beast of Revelation 13. And what does it say? The 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and brake in pieces. So see, it breaks in pieces. We'll see this in other places too, to show the evidence of its typology in the end. And breaks in pieces and stamped the residue with its feet. And what did it have? And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So it's not a mystery that this beast is the beast of Revelation 13 and has 10 horns, but they're not seemingly expecting this. Though in Revelation chapter 13, we see that this beast has power over the lion, over the bear, and over the leopard, because now that beast that had 7 heads is a beast that looks like all of these things. Okay? But what about the fact that the lion is coming to do his business first, and that the bear is going to do his business first, which is World War III after Jerusalem's attack? Immediately? I don't know how long after. We know the time frame of Jerusalem's attack at the end of 50 days to start the year, but when does World War III with Russia make its attack? Immediately after, within a couple months? We don't exactly know, but we know it would be shortly after, because when the 14 years begins, that will begin at about 2.5 years at the start of tribulation. That's going to be World War III, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom starting off. The leopard will be the control center, right? That will be where things will be controlled and things will be prepared and set for the coming mark of the beast. And then, of course, then you've got the beast of Revelation 13. The beast of Revelation 13, a lot of people, you see, when you see the description of it, okay, the beast rise up out of the sea. This was that 4th beast. He's the one with the 10 horns. and he has the 7 heads. And what do we see? The beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. His feet were like a bear. His mouth as the mouth of a lion. So when people see this, they just expect that when the tribulation starts, it's going to be the beast right away. They fail to understand that Daniel chapter 7 is telling us this is going to come first, then this is going to come second, then this is going to take over and prepare for this next beast that comes. And this fourth beast right here is the beast of Revelation 13. And when he takes over, he will have all of these guys in his control. That's what Revelation 13 shows us. But most people, when they see it, they think that this is just the point when it all starts. So that's part of the misunderstanding in reading the scriptures. But to their point, it's really what would have to happen. Because if this wasn't what was coming near the beginning, near the start, then they would have to understand how all of these other things are coming before it. And how do you account for that in a 7-year tribulation? You don't. You can't. You see? So they think he's coming to power. The war will come, all of those things. He's going to build the temple. And then once he builds the temple, by mid 7 years, he's going to step into it and proclaim himself God. You see? And that's what's coming. That's how they believe it's going to play out, without understanding these other portions that are coming ahead of it. And we saw even how it's described here in relation to this beast, that he's going to what? He's going to stamp the residue with his feet. Daniel 7. So remember, this 8th one that comes from among the 7, he's the one that has 10 horns. So he's clearly this 4th beast coming up from the water. And having the 10 horns, he's clearly the beast of Revelation 13 and having the 7 heads. And so, watch this. And stamped, here it is right here. The word stamped, it's only used twice. And it means to trample. So when we go to Revelation chapter 11, we see in Revelation chapter 11 that it says in verse 2, but the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. Okay? This is all about the body of the people, of the Gentiles, right? And the outside being trampled, them being killed, okay? Is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot. What are they going to do? Trample. They're going to trample underfoot for 42 months. What is this trampling for 42 months? This stamping of the residue under his feet. Who is it? It's the beast of Revelation and the one that has the 10 horns. Well, all we have to do is go to Revelation 13 again and see that this is the beast of the sea, the 4th one with the 7 heads and the 10 horns. And what do we see about him? We see that he's going to make war with the saints, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things. That's from the horns. And power was given unto him to what? Continue 42 months. So when is this treading of the 42 months going to take place? Of course, during the treading in the 42 months, but it's not until what? It's clearly not until, can't be when he's come to power, right? Something, when he comes to this power, he'll have the 42 months to tread on them. But before that happens, we of course see in Revelation chapter 7, there's the lion, the bear, and the leopard's time. Before he comes to power and has the merging of the power over all those. So here's another thing. When we go to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar, when we go to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar, we see the head of gold, right? The breast and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass, the legs of iron, his feet of iron and of clay. Now, what does the world generally like to tell us about the picture of Nebuchadnezzar? They try to tell us that this already took place, this already took place, this already took place, this already took place. Has it? Yeah, in part, these things have taken place. But what was shall be, what is shall be. This is called the head of gold represented what? Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, right? Doesn't Revelation tell us that there's going to be a fall of Babylon? Hello. Yet this image is already fulfilled, except for what they tell us right here, that there's a prophetic gap, and we're only waiting for this portion right here. So why would they think we're only waiting for this portion? Well, because they haven't understood what this represents in relation to playing out again in the end of days. But if we're just waiting on this prophetic gap, and it's just going to be the clay and the iron now mixed together in the toes, how many toes are there? There's 10 toes. 10 toes sounds familiar, doesn't it? 10 toes is another prophetic type of the beast that has 10 horns. It's just another picture of it. So what they're expecting is, again, like going to Revelation 13 and believing that Revelation 13 is going to start everything, and it's the mixing of iron and clay right off the bat, and it's going to start the time of the Ezekiel 39 war and the nations coming against Israel. Coming against Israel and Jerusalem in this battle. But did you see what happens? When it gets down to that point of the 10 horns or the 10 toes, how long is it going to last? You see, whether they think this battle takes place and it starts right off the bat, how long do they think it's going to last? Do they think it's supposed to last, I don't know, a few months and then the Lord defeats them? Or it's going to last 3.5 years and then the Lord's going to defeat them? How long is the Ezekiel 39 war supposed to last? You see? That's kind of a question as well. If you think it comes at the beginning, yet it represents the toes just like the horns, and you read what comes next after the feet with toes, what happens? The stone that is cut without hands will smite the image upon the feet that were of iron, clay, and break in pieces. Oh, you see that? We're seeing a break in pieces again, right? Do you know where else you see this break in pieces? Let me go to this one. Let me go to Daniel chapter 2 in this one. And you're going to see a whole bunch of wording of this break in pieces. We see even the conversation talking about in the latter days, which means the end of days. Okay? So we see right here that the stone comes, right? The stone that smote the image became a great mountain. We see that it break it in pieces, and what was the other part? Must be in a piece coming. So let me just keep my focus then on this. When the portion of the feet happens, it's when the stone smites the image and becomes a great mountain. Everybody understands that this is when the stone comes and smites the image. They believe all of this is already passed. There's a prophetic gap, and we're just waiting on this period right here. But most people will tell you in the Ezekiel 38-39 war, really the 39 war, they know that the Lord is going to defeat them. So if they believe that's what's coming first, and when it's defeated, because they don't think, do you realize this, guys? Most people, the vast majority of Christians in prophecy, or even those that don't study prophecy, but even most in prophecy, including Jews especially, don't believe that the Jews are going to be destroyed and removed from the land. They believe that the Lord already brought them back, that they're doing good, and that the Lord isn't going to allow them to be destroyed and removed from the land again. This is another reason why why nobody understands the 14 years. If they understood that the Jews have been erring and that the Lord is upset with them, they would understand why he's going to bring about this destruction and allow his land to rest. But if this is where it's supposed to start, it's supposed to start at the Ezekiel 38 war, and you've got the nations being mentioned, and then what happens? What happens? Then you've got the Ezekiel 39, which is the Ezekiel 39 war that everybody talks about. And if they believe it's coming near the beginning, then let me make it clear. The reason they think it's coming near the beginning is because they don't believe Jerusalem will be destroyed. So if they don't believe Jerusalem will be destroyed and Jews will have to flee and the land has to rest, if they don't believe that, if they don't understand that, then they talk about the Ezekiel 39 war happening at the beginning. But if the Ezekiel 39 war is happening at the beginning, then what about the Lord? What about the Lord? You see, they believe that Jerusalem is already compassed by these nations and more will join them, and they're going to come against Jerusalem. Jerusalem is going to help defeat them, and this stone is going to come and crush them and destroy it all. That means they believe it has to happen near the beginning, which is why you have so many. This one came out December 10th of 2024. This, of course, with Jack Hibbs, a great pastor. This guy here, Eric Steckelbach with this guy, came out February 6th. This time frame, Gog and Magog war building. You've got another great pastor, John Barnett, 13 years ago. This battle of Gog and Magog. Why are they talking about it? They all believe it relates to this point, that it's this time frame right here. Well, do you realize that if the Gog and Magog war is what happens near the beginning, and even if the pre-trib, okay, the pre-trib happens first, and then this Ezekiel 39 war happens, but the Jerusalem and Israel can't be defeated, then they must believe that the stone that smote the image is what's coming to get the victory. Hello? That's what it tells us. It's the stone that smites it and comes and gets the victory. And what does it say about the stone? And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So the Lord is going to be here, right? So the Lord is going to be here on heavenly Mount Zion. This mountain carved without hand that becomes a great mountain he's going to be on right away. Then what about the rest of tribulation? Where's the beast coming? None of them will tell you that they believe the Lord is going to be here for the first half of seals, because he is coming with that mountain carved without hand that becomes a great mountain. Did they forget that the stone is the Lord that defeats the Ezekiel 39 battle? Right? And what does he say? I will send a fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, that they shall know I am the Lord. Right? So you've got all these people teaching on it, believing that it's now, yet never talking about that I have seen, never telling you the understanding of the stone if the Ezekiel 39 battle is supposed to be at the beginning. Because that would then mean, okay, the Lord is here, and the mountain, the stone becomes a great mountain covering the earth, meaning over Jerusalem, it's heavenly Mount Zion. You see, but they haven't understood that. They haven't understood that there are three comings of the Lord. There's one in the above, there's one at the end of seals, and there's one at the end of trumpets. So because they haven't understood these things in the revelation from the Gospels that opened up because of the key that is, they don't understand that by teaching Gog and Magog at the beginning, that they're trying to say that then the Lord must be here because that's him coming as the rock who becomes the great mountain. You see the confusion in that? Do you ever hear any of them say that the Lord is going to be here on Mount Zion for the first 3.5 years of tribulation? No. Yet they're trying to say it's Ezekiel 39 war that's coming, and these nations compassing about Jerusalem are going to bring an attack. Israel's going to defeat them. Well, then what? Oh, Israel's going to defeat them, and that's the Ezekiel 39 war? That's not what it says about the Ezekiel 39 war. It says that the Lord would be the mountain, the one destroying the 10 toes, the one destroying the 10 horns. If he's the one destroying the 10 horns, which is a picture of the 10 toes, well, then isn't he the one destroying the beast? Well, then when did the beast have his turn? When did the beast get his portion of time in his 42 months? Do you see the glaring contradiction and the confusion of it? Even says he will send a fire, right? You're going to see where that is in a moment. We'll go to it in the Apocrypha, something we've shown a lot. So what haven't they understood? Clearly, they haven't understood the revelation that shows us in the end of seals compared to the end of trumpets. This is the Lord coming on Mount Zion. This is him at the end of the 6th year of seals, and it says, and said unto the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Now, why don't they get that this is separate? Why don't they get that this is the timing of that Ezekiel 39 war when the Lord defeats them? Why don't they get that? You see, because they generally sandwich seals and trumpets, or 3.5 years of seals and 3.5 years of trumpets. But if people say 3.5 years of seals and 3.5 years of trumpets, they're going to have to account for this. This would mean at mid 7.5 years, in their 3.5 years of seals thinking, and then 3.5 years of trumpets thinking, they're going to have to account for the Lord coming and people recognizing it as the day of his wrath at mid-tribulation. Have you ever heard anybody account? You ever hear a 7-year prophecy teacher who believes in 3.5 years of seals and 3.5 years of trumpets? You ever have them account this for you? If this is mid 7.5 years to them, how are they accounting for the Lord being here? Meaning, how are they going to count the next 3.5 years of trumpets? How are they going to account for that? I thought it was 7 years of tribulation, and now the Lord is here in a way that they can't understand it or explain it, because it's called the great day of his wrath when they see this coming. We know what this is. We know this is the timing of his coming at the end of 6 years of seals, before the great multitude rapture come. This is the timing of the Ezekiel 39 war. Which is what? Which is the stone that smites the image. That becomes a great mountain. You see how it starts to make more sense? You can't have the Ezekiel 39 war at the beginning, because then the Lord would be here, because he is the stone that smites it. And if you want to say, oh, it's 3.5 years in, then you've got to account for 3.5 years into tribulation, that the Lord is now here at mid-seals, or at mid-tribulation, I should say, in their 7-year thinking, at mid-tribulation, and now he's here. So what's going to take place during your next 3.5 years of trumpets? You see, don't they tell us that the beast is going to be the one to build the temple in a 7-year thinking? It'll be the beast. He'll make the declaration. They'll build the temple during the first 3.5 years of seals, or the first 3.5 years of tribulation. And then after 3.5 years of tribulation, he's going to go in and declare himself God. Well, and then they would say it starts the next 3.5 years of tribulation to end the 7 years. But if that's the case, if the Lord isn't going to destroy them at the beginning in the Ezekiel 39 war, meaning he would be here for the first half, if that's not what some believe, and they believe it's at the end of the first 3.5, well, then it's the Lord here now at the end of the first 3.5, and then how is the beast going to go into this temple that they believe is going to be built in the first 3.5? How is he going to go in when the Lord has now come as the mountain carved without hand? You see how clear the confusion gets in that? It becomes so obvious. Let me show you another point of confusion that connects directly to it. Watch this. We know about the beast, right? We were talking about it. And he has what? 10 horns. These are those cornets, right? They're going to be 10 kings. And they have not received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. And what does it say? These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords, King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. This is the Lord coming, clearly defeating the beast and his 10 horns. If this is him coming to defeat the beast, which is the image, and it's representative as the 10 toes, which it is, and he is that stone coming, then they need to understand that this right here is the time being spoken about. Do you think this makes any sense to be at the beginning of tribulation? How can it be the 10 nations coming around Jerusalem, Jerusalem defeating them, and the Lord coming and destroying those 10 nations from defeating them and becoming that mountain that becomes a great mountain when the beast never even had his time to go? Makes no sense, does it? Well, guess what? When you realize that this right here, and you see lowercase, Lord of Lords, King of Kings, except for one uppercase and one uppercase, that's got to be a different battle than the one that takes place in Revelation 19. When, behold, the white horse is coming, right? Does judge and make war and has many crowns, his vestiture dipped in blood. People will say, well, this is clearly when the Lord comes, returning feet down on the Mount of Olives, the blood to the bridle of the horse, like Revelation 14, right? He has a sharp sword, and what does he do? He treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God, and now look at it. It's all uppercase, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And what do we see? The beast and the false prophet, which did these things, are now cast into the lake of fire. What would the world of prophecy tell you this is? Obviously, at the return of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives. I don't think there are many that get this wrong, realizing that this is the end of tribulation. They would tell you this is the end of 7 years. Okay. That's right. I'm with them. That's absolutely correct. But then what do you do with Revelation 17's war? Hello. What about this war? What about this war when he defeats the beast and the 10 kings? Do you realize this one, it wasn't about defeating the beast with the 10 kings? This one, it's all these nations coming against, and who's going into the pit? The beast and the false prophet this time. Chapter 7 was the beast and the 10 kings. The false prophet isn't defeated here. There is no casting into the lake of fire. But you know what a lot of people try to do? Is they try to say, well, this is just at the same time more description in a connection to Revelation 19. No, it isn't. They haven't understood that this is a period representing seals, and that this is the end of 6 years of seals when the Lord comes with the mountain carved without hand. Watch this. Remember where we can prove this too, right? In 2nd Esdras. 2nd Esdras, man, this piece, I've said it a number of times. In 2nd Esdras, this is a beautiful piece of prophecy in here. Do we use the Apocryphas to say, oh, look at what we found in Apocryphas, and then go try and prove it out in Scripture? Never, not even once. we reveal it from Scripture over all of these years, and then go into sometimes into the Apocryphas, or other people are digging into the Apocryphas after teachings, and then they find connections, and then we go in and look at them. That's exactly what happened here. Just consider this. Over all of these years that the Apocrypha has been around, and nobody's been able to associate it correctly in relation to the end of days. So how could I have done it? I couldn't have, had I come just to this. It was the revelation of Scripture that opened up, because of the key of the differences in the Gospels, that once we were able to go into this, it all started to open up to us as well. There's your pre-trib right here, right? We've talked about it many times. 2nd Ezra chapter 13, starting in verse 29. When the Most High will deliver those who are on the earth. That's the pre-trib. Then bewilderment of mind, and they're going to what? Make war against each other. That's nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. That's the red horse rider. And then it says, when these things come to pass, and the signs occur which I showed you before. So what this means is he's referring to everything in the earlier chapters that came, that he's just not rehashing them all. Okay? Those are the events of seals. Then he's talking now to the end of the 6th year of seals. It says, then will my son be revealed, whom you saw as a man coming up from the sea. And when all nations hear his voice, every man shall leave his own land, and the warfare they had against one another, because it was nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, right? Where do we see this? We see this even in Zechariah chapter 8. Remember this? Zechariah chapter 8, the prophetic type of the beginning of the 7 years of trumpet judgments after the 7 years of seals. And what do we see? The Lord is now he's come on his mountain. It's the holy mountain of the Lord, because at the end of seals, he came on Mount Zion. What else do we see? He gathers the remnant of his people, right, for the house of Israel. And what does he tell them in verse 10? For before these days, there was no man for hire, nor any beast, neither was there any peace to him that went out or came in because of the affliction, for I set every man one against his neighbor. That's the story of the nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. And then what does it say? And an innumerable multitude shall be gathered together, as you saw, desiring to come to conquer him. Who are these coming to conquer him? They're the 10 toes. They're the 10 horns. Right? It's the same thing. They're the 10 horns. They're the 10 toes. That's who's coming to conquer. And then what does it say? But he shall stand on top of Mount Zion, and Zion will come to be made manifest to all people, prepared and built, as you saw, listen to this, a mountain carved without hands. Do you think the reference is the 10 toes and the image of the beast? Well, what about everything that came before it? What is everything that came before it? Just like we showed in Scripture. Everything that came before it is the rest of the image. Proving to you that if this is that point, when he's going to defeat the nations coming against them, and all of them fighting against, and then gathering back to Israel and to Jerusalem to fight because they're seeing the Lord come, this stone carved without hand coming. And what do we know this stone, this Mount Zion is? We, of course, know that it's paradise. This is when he's coming at the timing of the end of seals. And then he's going to gather the great multitude rapture, the mid-trib group, as you guys know, to paradise. Just like he said in John chapter 14, that he's going to what? Go and prepare a place, and when I return, I will receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. So he went to a place to prepare, which is paradise. And when he comes back, he's coming back with paradise. To do what? To receive them unto himself with the place that he came back with, that he prepared for them. And that is the mountain carved without hands. So you're clearly seeing there's no way that the Ezekiel 39 war can come at the beginning if the Lord is the one that destroys them. because then that would mean paradise is here. He's here on Mount Zion. Well, how is World War III then going to take place? And if they believe that it's just the beginning of the war and that there's going to be like a 3.5-year war breaking out, well, then how do they believe the temple is going to be built in the first 3.5 years with war taking place in Israel and Jerusalem? Huh. What about that part? And if they say, no, it's going to be the war and it's going to spread around the world and Jerusalem will fend them off, and then it's going to be at mid when the Lord comes, at the end of the seals portion in the first 3.5 years, and then he's going to crush those 10 toes, because Revelation 17, that's the 10 toes, the 10 horns. That's when he's going to feed them. Well, then that means that the Lord is here at 3.5 years into tribulation in their 7-year thinking, and it means that the beast who's going to go step into the temple can't actually be here because the Lord's already defeated him with the 10 horns. Hello. You see how it's like a strainer. There's so many holes in it, it's not even close to be able to be understood in a 7-year understanding. It's impossible. But we've so many people, and I was one of them until the Spirit led in the revelation. I was no different than everybody else believing in a 7-year tribulation. You know, but once you start to ask questions and look into these things, and you pray over them, and you watch this intro series, these are the things that open up to you. And so many people, if they're true to themselves, as they have read the Gospels, and as they've studied through with prophecy, have had questions over many, many of these things. And this is just making it clear that it's not possible for something like this to take place in the way of the events that they're looking at. You cannot have this happen in a 7-year thinking. Here's another thing. Let's go again to Revelation 6. There's the other group of people. So we just saw it in those that believe 7 years, in 3.5 years of seals, and 3.5 years of trumpets. So we've been able to just put that to bed. But now what about those people that sandwich the seals and the trumpet judgments and say they're like different viewpoints of judgments happening during the 7 years as a sandwich, like two pieces of bread on top of each other, playing out together in 7 years? Okay? I bring you back to the same question. How does the King, Lord of Lords and King of Kings, when the Lamb comes and defeats the 10 toes or the 10 horns and the beast, and then there's also another one at the end with the treading of the grapes of wrath? Does he just do them both together at the same time? One is the defeating of the 10 horns or the 10 toes and the beast, but not cast into the lake of fire, but defeating them here on Mount Zion. Here on Mount Zion, coming with the mountain carved without hand. Yet at the same time, at the time of the treading of the winepress of the grapes of wrath of Almighty God, and he's going to cast the beast and the false prophet in the lake of fire. It's not even the same story. Let alone understanding that it's him coming with the mountain carved without hand, which they all know. That if you sandwich it, how is he the one coming on the mountain carved without hand, yet returning feet down on the Mount of Olives? Dun, dun, dun. You see how clear it becomes? Instead of looking at it through a strainer full of holes, you can understand that the truth is revealed in the differences of the Gospels. That gives you the key to understand that the end of days and the different portions of people in play, during these times, in a pre, mid, and post, over 14 years and above, is revealed, and it opens everything up. That's why I always share the intro series at the beginning. This is the type of stuff that it just crystal clear opens up in understanding every single time. So the confusion is it's multiple, right? It's extremely it's in every single angle. And it all stemmed back to the lens of Matthew 24 over and over and over again. That's why we've been trying to reach who we can in the realization. That's why the book was written, so that people can read these things and simply just read chapter 1 to begin to understand something so simple. Or listen to chapter 1 from the website in the Audible that's on the website. And just go chapter 1, chapter 2, and study it, pray over it, and see it for yourself. Clearly, it's impossible for the Ezekiel 39 war to take place at the beginning when it's the Lord who destroys them. Clearly, it's impossible for the Ezekiel 39 war to take place at 3.5 years into tribulation, because then the Lord is here in mid-tribulation as the mountain carved without hand at the time when the temple, in their thinking, is supposed to have been built. Then how would the beast step into it when the Lord has just defeated him with the 10 toes? You can't stick him at the end of 7 years in a simple straight sandwiching 7 years only, because then he's coming to defeat them. And when he does, he's coming with paradise, with heavenly Mount Zion, with the stone that becomes a great mountain, and he's not then returning feet down on the Mount of Olives. He's going to defeat the beast and the 10 toes from what? From the mountain, from the stone that becomes a great mountain, and then he's going to what? Step off onto the Mount of Olives, and it's going to be the treading of the grapes, and then he's going to defeat the beast again and cast him and the false prophet into the lake of fire? There's only one way this entire storyline works. 14 years. No other way to understand it. It's impossible. It is 100% impossible to understand it in a 7-year thinking. So how does it play out? Real quick. You have the events of the beasts that came first from Daniel 7. You have the Nebuchadnezzar image playing out during seals as well from Daniel 2 until the end of the 6th year, when the Lord comes and defeats the 10 toes, the 10 horns, and the beast. The temple will not have been rebuilt, but it will have been slated to get rebuilt, proclaimed to be rebuilt. Only the foundation will be built around mid-seals, but nothing else will get built. The beast will show up and have his power during the 42 months in the mid-first 7 seals, 3.5 years or 2.5 or so years into tribulation for 42 months until the end of the 6th year of seals. Then the Lord comes on heavenly Mount Zion, the mountain carved without hand, gathers the great multitude to paradise, and those from the house of Israel to the land, and the house of Judah then coming. And then the Lord is there on Mount Zion, and the temple is being rebuilt with the Lord there, with the 144,000 going out in the power of the Lord. And the temple then being rebuilt with the Lord there. And it'll be 3.5 years to mid-trumpets, now 10.5 years total, till Satan is cast down and those with him. The pit is open. The beast comes back. Remember, the false prophet doesn't have to come back because he wasn't defeated at the end of seals. And then you have the beast, the false prophet, and Satan, and the last 2.5 of the 3.5 years of absolutely chaos and war breaking out, and it being worse than at mid-seals, until the Lord returns feet down after being cut off, returns feet down on the Mount of Olives to begin the 14th year of tribulation, which will be as it was in the days of Noah. That's how it plays out. That's how it plays out. It's when the beast comes back from the pit and goes into perdition, that the temple will have been rebuilt in the first half of the 7 years of trumpets, which is from the 8th year approximately to the 10.5-year mark, being a total building of 3.5 years. And when Satan's cast down and the pit is open and the beast returns, that's when he goes in. And that's the abomination of desolation in Matthew's discourse at the 10.5-year mark. It becomes so clear to understand. If you need to go back and watch this beginning again, track it, follow it through, you will clearly begin to understand it for yourself. Now, let's go back into Daniel 8. In Daniel chapter 8, we saw this right here, right? We saw the different horns and what they meant. And then what is he going to do? How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Okay, let's go look at this word for sanctuary. Let's go to Daniel chapter 8. In Daniel chapter 8, okay, this word for sanctuary, it's the word 6944. We've talked about this many times. What is the sanctuary during seals? It's still the time of the Gentiles, right? Until the great multitude rapture in the 7th year of seals. So what's the sanctuary? It's the people. What do we know about the people? That they have to be cleansed, right? They have to be made right. They have to be made clean. The sanctuary is the people. They are the people, because the Spirit of God, until the end of the Gentile age at the end of seals, they are the sanctuary. The temple of God is within still. That's why you see it's the saints, the cleansing of the saints. Well, when we look at this word, let's see how it proves it to us. Okay? What was that word? Where was I? The sanctuary, cleansing of the sanctuary. What was I missing here? Sanctuary, sanctuary. Why did I bring up this? Sorry, I lost my track for a second. Daniel 8:14. There we go. The word cleanse. Okay? Then shall the sanctuary, being a saint, shall be what? Cleansed. So this is what I was just saying. They had to be made clean. Okay? And this period is a total period of 2,300 days. What is this word for cleansed? Look at the description, the definition of it. Look at this. To be justified, to be just of God, to be just, be righteous, conduct character. Listen to this. To be put or made right. Okay? To be justified. Justify, to make, to appear righteous. Make someone righteous. To bring to justice. To make righteous, turn to righteousness. What do you think that's telling you? They had to be made clean. They had to be made clean. Sounds familiar, right? Remember this in Revelation chapter 7? Revelation chapter 7. We see this exact same thing, right? The great multitude rapture that happens in the 7th year of seals. And what does it say about them? What are these which are arrayed in white robes? Where came they from? No, I don't know who they are. These are they which came out of great tribulation and have washed their robes and made them white. They've what? They had to launder their clothing. Notice how it's only used one time right here. It's talking to this group of those that survived alive and those that died. They had to make their clothes white. They had to wash their robes. And if you recall, the word white, which means to make white, is used 2 times. Where's the other place this is used? You guys know it. What's the period of time we're talking about now? The time of the Ezekiel 39 war, where it really happens at the end of 6 years of seals. And then you've got the great multitude rupture. This all happens what? After 6 days or after 6 years of seals. And then you've got what? The great multitude rupture. So the Lord coming and the great day of his wrath at the end of the 6 year of seals is the timing of the Ezekiel 39 war, which is the end of 6 years of seals, which is the timing of them, then the great multitude coming in, those who had to be made white, and the time of their cleansing being completed, and them having been made white is the same word used in Mark chapter 9, being made white, which is our reference that we talk about often about the difference from Luke compared to Mark compared to Matthew. The after 6 days in Mark is the after 6 years of seals, meaning in the 7th year. The after of seals. The after 6 days in Mark is the after 6 years of trumpet judgments in Matthew's. And that's why you've got all of these different wordings in the differences in these Gospels in the Transfiguration, which again goes back to the beginning of the story of understanding the differences in the Gospels that prove out prophecy. This is that same pointing to group. We've even showed the fuller being the end of seals when they're reunited back, father and son, mother and daughter. The job of the Elijah workers is over, right? It all plays out in order. The whole story of it plays out in order. So now, where does this lead us to? Well, we're going to go look into this difference in the Transfiguration story. But what about this timing? After 6 days. We know it's after 6 years, right? We've understood that it's after 6 years. But when we come to Numbers chapter 24, in the crystal clearness of verse 7 to verse 10, that has the Lord pictured as the man with the pitcher of water, that has the Lord pictured as the ox, the unicorn, and third has the Lord pictured as the lion when he comes. We are told that these are 3 blessings to the 3 times of the coming of the Lord. Well, what are these, guys? What are they? It's Luke chapter 21, of which you guys know about, which is the coming of the Son of Man in a cloud when he comes for 40 days after the pre-trib and the wedding week. That's what we're going to be going into here in a moment. When we go to Mark and we go to Mark's discourse, so this in Luke, it would be him as the man with the pitcher of water. In Mark, we know that he's coming again. This one in Mark, when he's coming in the clouds, plural, not in a single cloud like Luke, but in the clouds, plural, this is when he's coming as what? This is when he's coming as the ox, as the Aleph. The first one is him coming as Reuben, the man with the pitcher of water. That's the beginning of his 40 days. Then he's coming at the time of the ox. This time of the coming of the ox, remember I was telling you about breaking in pieces and breaking bones? Look at what it says about when he comes as the unicorn, which means the ox or the bull, okay? Which means Taurus. It says what? Because remember, Taurus is when he's coming at the end of the 6 year seals. After 6 days, he's coming as what? Messiah ben Joseph / Messiah ben Ephraim. And what is he going to do? Look at what it says. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies. And then what does it say? And shall break their bones. And shall what? Break their bones. What if we go to Daniel chapter 2 again, and we see that the beast, right, that it was the one breaking in Daniel chapter 8 and going into chapter 7, right, that it was breaking in pieces and trampling them underfoot. But then it says that he would be trampled underfoot. He would be broken in pieces. Look at what it says about the image. And when the stone comes, which is the stone that becomes a great mountain. And back again in Daniel chapter 2, verse 34, thou sawest till that a stone was cut without hands, which smote the image upon the feet that were of iron and clay. Listen to this. And break them in pieces. He's going to break them in pieces. Isn't that exactly what we just saw? This is when he comes in the clouds, plural, when he's coming as the ox of Numbers 24, which relates to the second time he is coming, which is the mountain carved without hands. And what is he going to do to all of his enemies, the nations gathered? He's going to be breaking their bones. He's going to be crushing them. Again, directly related to what we've been saying, which is when he comes at the end of seals. The least difficult one to understand is when he comes to tread the winepress of the wrath of Almighty God, right? When he comes and defeats the beast, when he returns feet down on the Mount of Olives, everybody knows that's when he's coming as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So which one do you think that is? Matthew chapter 24, the third coming, which is the official coming of the Lord, when he will what? Well, just like it says in verse 27, when he will be seen as lightning shines out of the east unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Why does anybody believe that Matthew chapter 24 at the coming of the Son of Man is pre-trib? It's telling you that he's coming as lightning from one end unto the other, when everybody will see him. Well, everybody's not going to see him pre-trib. And it says immediately after the tribulation of those days. How is that pre-trib? And then what does it say? Then they will see him coming in the clouds. It sounds like marks. But when you go to the Strong's Concordance, you realize that the word in here should have been on, not like Luke and Mark, that was actually the word in. This is when he's coming on the clouds with power and great glory, when he's going to appear immediately after the tribulation, and the whole world is going to see him as lightning from one end to the other. Well, that's clearly when he's coming as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and lo and behold, that's the third blessing. So what do we see? 3 blessings, right? The king wanted him, right? Balak was angered because he wanted Balaam to bring curses against the people of Israel, and he gave them 3 blessings. The Son of Man coming for 40 days, starting in the man with the pitcher of water, represented by Reuben, and then coming at the end of seals as the mountain carved without hand at the time of Taurus, right? And he's coming to break the bones and defeat those nations, which is the Ezekiel 39 war. And then when he returned, feet down on the Mount of Olives as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, which is the constellation of Leo. So what's the constellation of the man with the pitcher of water? Of course, that's Aquarius. So there's 3 comings of the Lord in 3 forms. There's 3 blessings, and we understand all of them, and all 3 of them are directly related to the things we've taught over the years in relation to the tribes in the wilderness. The man, the ox, the lion. So, what month should the Lord be coming in? It becomes pretty clear, right? Well, let's see if we can figure this out. Let's see if we can figure this out. Here we are in Luke 21. Remember this in Luke 21? What does this mean? But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you, delivering you up into prisons and so forth, okay? What is the but before all these? It means before nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. We just covered that a little while ago, right? When does nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom begin? At the end of the above. When the 14 years begins, it's the beginning of the red horse rider. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. The white horse rider is part of the above in the 50 days, which is when the Son of Man is coming in Luke for the 40 days to warn as Jonah did. Okay? And when he comes, which is before the nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, he's warning of the coming attack on Jerusalem, which is the beginning of nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. So the before all these is what? It represents after the 7-day wedding, when the Lord comes on the 8th day, we're going to get there, on the 8th day before, on the 8th day, the 7 days after the wedding, on the 8th day, when he comes to begin his 40 days. And what does it say about a group of people here? Some of them are going to be delivered up into synagogues and into prisons, okay? It'll turn to them for a testimony. Don't meditate on it. The Spirit's going to give you the wording. And then what does it say? You're going to be betrayed by both brethren, kinfolk, friends, and some of you are going to be put to death. So what do we know about this group? Some put into prison, some put to death. Who is this group? We know that this group is the remnant workers, right? The group from the pre-trib that was chosen by the Lord to remain and to serve him, right? As the little lambs, the little rocks, all of those things, as the light. And we know that they represent Smyrna. And Smyrna is the only place where we see the same some of you is only found in Luke's discourse. Prison is only found in Luke's discourse. And what does it say about some of them? Some of them will be put to death. So when does this church of Smyrna officially kick off? At the 40 days. Okay, after the wedding. They're going to be waiting, as Luke chapter 12 told us, and we've taught on numerous times. They'll know shortly ahead of time to be ready when the Lord returns from the wedding. And when he knocks, they will open unto him, and he's going to come and serve them. And then the 40 days begin. That'll be after the wedding. So we know that Luke 21, but before all these, relates to the period of the start of the 40 days. Well, what are we seeing happening? Persecution is coming. Where is this persecution going to start? On the workers. It's going to begin with the workers. This is a conversation to those there with the Lord during the 40 days and the persecution that's going to come against them right from the beginning of the 40 days. So now, when is this time? When is this period of time? Well, according to what we've understood, and we're going to touch on this a little bit in a moment, right here, 11/9, the 11th month, 9th day, the end of the 7th Sabbath, in account from sowing and reaping as it was in the beginning, before Exodus 12, when it went from Nisan at Abib. Okay? It's the combination, as we've said, of the two calendars. And what is the 11th month? Aquarius. What is the timing of the coming of the Lord? First, according to Numbers, he's coming in the month of Aquarius, the man with the pitcher of water and holding a branch, which relates to the olive branch, which is the timing of around the New Year of Trees. So what are we looking for? The escape from the 26th to the 27th of January, 2026. And we'll touch on again why 2026 compared to why we thought it was this year. And the return of the Lord after the 7-day wedding right here. This would be the beginning of the Son of Man's 40 days when he returns from the 7-day wedding, which means what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. And we know the Lord comes on the 8th day. Okay? Which is directly 4 months earlier than where these events should have began. Okay? So now, Scripture just told us the 3 months of the 3 comings of the Lord. I didn't say it. Scripture did. And this is supposed to be Aquarius in Shabbat. which means if this is the coming of the Lord, at his first coming being the man with the pitcher of water, then we know 7 to the 8 days before that has to be the timing of the pre-trib, when the Lord takes out, or the Spirit takes out, and they vanish in the pre-trib, and there's the 7-day wedding before he returns on the 8th day. Now, why am I bringing this up? What's the point in bringing this up? Well, you're going to be very surprised by this. Somebody already knows what it was. I shared it with at least 1 or 2, maybe 3 people. We know it starts with man. Remember the 4 faces, the 4 beasts around the throne, right? Man is Reuben, man with the pitcher of water, south. This is when he comes as the Son of Man. Ephraim is when he comes at the end of 6 years of seals, when he's coming as that ox unicorn, as Messiah ben Ephraim. The other 3rd time is when he's coming as the lion, which is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and it has to do with the grapes and the treading of the grapes. So again, what are you understanding here? You can see that this timing and this portion is again relating to when he comes and destroys those enemies. You even see the arrows here. Okay, you've got arrows. You've got the unicorn. It's directly connected to him coming at the end of seals, when he destroys the enemies and breaks into pieces. It's when he comes as the mountain carved without hand, which is the Ezekiel 39 war, when he destroys them. And again, even going to this, the rest of the story here, we see that they all come together to come and destroy him, and there he is on Mount Zion. And after he defeats them, it's symbolized, the defeat and defeating them is symbolized by fire. And after it's symbolized by fire and they're defeated, we see the house of Israel, the 10 tribes, being gathered to him, okay? And seeing gathered to himself another multitude that was peaceable. These are the 10 tribes. You're going to see how this plays out in a moment. But what do we see here? We've got the Son of Man coming in Reuben, Aquarius, before he comes in Ephraim, the ox, which is Taurus. Okay? Now, why am I showing that as well? Because this right here, the start of the 40 days, which is Luke 21, but before all these, is when some are going to be cast into prison and some of them are going to be put to death. And they are the Smyrna workers, which is again the beginning of the 40 days, which would put it right here, if we finally understood this year. Okay? Which is, what, about 10 months from now. But remember, the pre-trib happens up here, so we're a little less than 10 months. It's not so bad. So why am I making a point of showing February 3rd, 2026? Having understood the year, we understand the month unequivocally, the scriptures told us. And if this is that 4 months early, which it is, then this has to be the timing of the Son of Man starting his 40 days. But also the timing of persecution. All right? So, remember I told you all this would be connected to Daniel chapter 8? Let's go to Daniel chapter 8 one more time. Let's go to our brother in prophecy, Daniel chapter 8. Watch this. Listen to what it says. Verse 14. And he said unto me, how long, right, will all this take place? And he said unto me, and remember what's happened. There's the persecution, there's the treading underfoot, right? There's the sacrifices, all of these things, which is against the sanctuary and the saints and those needing to be cleansed and everything else, right? So how long is this going to last? Well, do you see why? Why am I showing this point in relation to the beginning of the 40 days? Is because this is the time when persecution is going to begin. When the Lord shows up to begin his 40 days and he knocks, and that remnant group of Smyrna, that remnant of Luke, as the Moses and Elijah companies, excuse me, are going to have this banquet meal with them, From that banquet meal, they'll be with the Lord for 40 days. And this is the beginning of persecution. That's the beginning of persecution. Okay? And how long does it say this period would last? 2,300 days. It's going to last 2,300 days. Well, where's it going to start? It's going to start in Aquarius. Because the first blessing is the coming of the Lord in Aquarius. And it's going to start in Aquarius at the coming of the Lord to begin his 40 days. How is it going to stop? How's it going to end? It's going to end by the coming of the Lord, right? When he comes with heavenly Mount Zion and has that war and destroys them in the Ezekiel 39 war, which is the mountain carved without hand from Daniel 2, destroying the toes with the beast, which is the Revelation 17 war, when he comes and defeats the beast and the 10 horns. Which means it's what? Well, it would mean it would have to be his coming when he destroys them and breaks their bones, those nations of enemies, when he comes as what? As the ox. So what are the chances that he comes in Aquarius, the man with the pitcher of water, and when he returns after 6 days or after 6 years and destroys the enemies, that it's going to be at a time connected to Taurus, the ox, when he comes as Messiah ben Ephraim? Well, let's have a look. What do you think the chances are? What do you think this chance of 2,300 days is going to equal? Let me show you. 2026, the 3rd day of February, just like I was showing you, the beginning of the 40 days of the Son of Man. If we add 2,300 days, we end up on May 22nd, 2032. Now, remember what we said about the Hebrew calendar. The Hebrew calendar sometimes is off by a day in a month, a day and a half. We know over a 6-year and change period, there's going to be accounting for month differences, or in the Gregorian, there's account for leap year and all that stuff, right? But let me show you where it just simply equals in a 2,300 count from Aquarius. Do you think it's going to equal Taurus, the second blessing, after 6 years or after 6 days? Check it out. 2032, May 22nd, is right in the midst of Sivan. And what is Sivan, brothers and sisters? You guessed it. Taurus. Taurus. When is he coming? He's coming in the month with the man with the pitcher of water, which is Aquarius. And when he comes again at the end of 6 days or 6 years, after 6 days, 6 years, when is he coming? He's coming in Taurus. What are the chances that that exact count is from the beginning of his coming in Aquarius and his coming again in the clouds for marks in Taurus? You think that's by chance? You think it just so happened? It's not like I made it up. I simply used Numbers chapter 24 that showed us the 3 blessings of the Lord. The third one is the least of all mysteries. Everybody understands it's him coming as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So what do you think the chances are that his coming in the Lion of the tribe of Judah is going to be at the time of the Lion Leo? I don't only think it's possible, it's 100% going to happen. Is it because I'm saying it? Because I'm such a, oh man, oh, I can't believe I understood. No, it literally said it. It literally said the second one. It literally said the first one. It doesn't tell us the years. It doesn't tell us the days. But we understand this from all of the other revelation over the last 7.5 years that got us there. We understand this because Daniel just told us the count. So we can know it within a few days, but we can certainly know the year once it all begins. And then we know that the Lord is here as the Lion of the tribe. We know that he's here from the seventh year of seals till toward the end of trumpets, before the end of that war. And then he's gone and returns as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. It's the three blessing. It's crystal clear right in front of us. He's coming in Aquarius, and then he's coming at the end of 6 years of seals. After 6 days, he's coming in Taurus. Right there before our eyes. And of course, when he comes in Taurus, he is that, I don't know why I had this one up. He is that man, right? He is that stone that becomes a great mountain. And that's what I was showing. This breaking pieces that we just covered. Awesome. So now watch this. Let's go back to a little bit of Ezekiel 39. Remember I talked about the fire. All right, we saw that. What is he going to do? He's going to send a fire. When we looked at the Apocrypha, what did it say it was symbolized by? When he defeats them, it was symbolized by the fire. Hello. It was symbolized by the fire. And then what is he going to do? Well, then we see the house of Israel being gathered to him. All right? So the house of Israel is going to be gathered to him after he destroys them in the fire, which is the 10 toes and the beast, which is the Ezekiel 39 war at the end of 6 years of seals. And then, you guys all know this. I thought I'd bring it up again. What does it say? The shields and the bucklers, the bow and the arrows, and the handstaves into spears, right? And what are they going to do? The handstaves and the spears, and they shall burn them with fire 7 years. How are they going to burn them with fire for 7 years? Do you understand? Let me show you this other piece, right? So we already showed in every way you want to slice it in a 7-year tribulation, it's impossible to have Ezekiel 39 understood as the Lord coming as the mountain carved without hand. In any way you try to slice it in a 7-year teaching, it's not possible. But now let's accentuate it even more. If they believe the Ezekiel 39 war is coming at the beginning, like so many talk about and teach, and we've already just completely destroyed that by showing that it's the Lord coming with Mount Zion, so that's truly impossible. But even if they believe that, what did it say? What did it say next? It said that they're going to now burn all the weapons for the next 7 years. So in their 7 years of tribulation, if they believe the Ezekiel 39 war is coming first, and even if they don't understand that it's the Lord coming on Zion, then they've got to believe that it's 7 years of weapons being burned at the Ezekiel 39 war, let alone that it's the Lord coming and destroying them first. So there's only 7 years of tribulation in their thinking, and the weapons are going to be burned for the next 7 years during tribulation of war. You see the confusion? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Well, where else do people put it? Oh, well, it's going to be at mid. Okay, how are you going to burn weapons for 7 years? Why would you be burning weapons for the second half of tribulation of your 7 years and another 3.5 years, what, in the millennial reign? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Okay, let me show you another one. What about those who say the Ezekiel 39 war again is at the end of 7 years of tribulation in their 7-year thinking? Well, then they believe that it's going to be burning of weapons for the first 7 years of the millennial reign. What? The Lord, when he comes and he destroys all of the enemies in that final year of tribulation, is going to renew and restore the earth. Like we read in Ezekiel, I think, 61 or 65. He's going to renew and restore the earth. And people are going to live hundreds of years again. The water is going to go out from the temple, and it's going to restore and regenerate the whole earth. Why would they be burning weapons for the first 7 years of the millennial reign with the Lord ruling and reigning? That make any sense to anybody? I mean, out of all of them, that's the one that kind of makes a little bit of sense compared to the rest. But if you ponder and you think for a moment, why on earth they would be burning weapons for 7 years during the millennial reign, when the Lord says in 65 of Isaiah, when the new heavens and the new earth, this isn't the everything for after the millennial reign. This is what? The renewing. See? A fresh new thing, which means what? To rebuild. Okay? And the former things, look at this. And the former shall not be remembered nor come to mind during the millennial reign. So all of the battling and the war and all these things will not be remembered anymore, and people will be living to hundreds of years old again. You see the problem? If the war is at the beginning, then there's no weapons for the tribulation. If it's in the middle, then you got no weapons for the second half of tribulation, and you're still burning them during the first 3.5 years of the millennial reign. If it's after the tribulation of 7 years in their thinking, then you're burning weapons during the Lord's millennial reign, when all this thing of war will be no longer remembered. People will be living for hundreds of years, and the earth will have been restored and renewed. Why would they be burning weapons for 7 years? I told you, it looks like a strainer, right? It doesn't make any sense until you understand the truth is 100% unequivocally 14 years. What else do we have? Listen to this. Back in Ezekiel 39, verse 12. And 7 months shall, listen to this, the house of Israel. Interesting, right? Because who comes to him after the Ezekiel 39 war? Once he has destroyed them by fire, and the weapons will get burnt for 7 years. Wait, the weapons are being burnt for 7 years. You never covered that, Alan. Okay, look what happens. They start burning the weapons in the 7th year of seals. And what do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They burnt weapons because the Lord has been here on Mount Zion as Messiah ben Ephraim, as high priest and king, with the modern day Zerubbabel, and you got 1 year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, where they've been burning weapons. And then what happens? There's the battle, the Lord is cut off, and then what happens? He's going to return, feet down on the Mount of Olives, to start the final and 14th year. Do you know what happens in the final 14th year? Yeah, it's the Lord. It's the days of Noah, the final year as in the days of Noah from Matthew 24. But to understand it, all you got to do is go to Zechariah chapter 14, at the coming of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives. And what does he say to Jerusalem? Watch this. Okay, it's the time of the wine press, but it's going to be consuming with flesh. I mean, it's craziness, right? Listen to this. In Zechariah 14:14, this is at the coming of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives. It says, and Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem. Where are they going to fight? Are they all going to be punching each other? Are they going to be using fists? Or do you think that they're going to, 7 years, they're going to turn all of their weapons into plowshares? But if you remember the other scriptures, that says they're going to turn their plowshares and pruning hook back into spears and into weapons. For 7 years, they're destroyed. And then, at the end of 7 years, they're going to use them one more time. They're going to turn them back one more time, and they're going to be working with the Lord to bring about the treading of the grapes and destroying the enemies and everything else. Just like Zechariah 14 says. You see? When you see these things, when you understand these things, and you understand the 14 years, all of these things open up. Well, then you've got the 7 months, and you got the house of Israel. So now, remember what we've been talking about with the house of Israel. The house of Israel is the group. So there's the Gentiles, which is the great multitude, which were grafted in to the natural house, right? To the natural tree. And the house of Israel was broken off, and the Gentiles were grafted in. Well, we know that the Gentiles that are grafted in, or the branches grafted in, they're going to be broken off to go to paradise. And the true house of Israel is going to make their way back to Jerusalem, to the Lord there. And so will the house of Israel, which is exactly what we read in Zechariah chapter 8, as you guys have seen before. Okay? With the house of Judah and the house of Israel. We see the same thing in Jeremiah 31, which is the same timing at the end of seals. It's the exact same storyline. And what was I getting at? I just had a brain fart. Bring it back. There we go. So now here we are, again, seeing another connection to these things that we've now understood, that there is the Gentiles grafted in. They'll be broken off. We see it in the story of Noah, of course, in the 7 years, 7 days. And we're going to talk about that in another moment. And then we still have the house of Israel, right, of the natural branch that would be grafted back into the natural. So who are the ones that are going to be bearing the bones for 7 months? It's the house of Israel. And it just so happens that it's the house of Israel when the Lord comes on heavenly Mount Zion after destroying them by fire in the Ezekiel 39 war, that it's the house of Israel who are the 10 tribes that will be gathered back unto the Lord. That it's them that are the ones burning with the weapon, burning the weapons, and then they're the ones for 7 months bearing and cleansing the land. And this gets really interesting. We're not going to go into this today because remember I said at the beginning, I'm still working on the whole calendar and this now having to adjust for this one more year on the year side, but I don't believe we have to adjust on the sowing and reaping 7-year side, okay? But look at what we have. 7 months they're going to be bearing and cleansing in the land. Do you think they're going to be rebuilding the city streets and temple during those 7 months? No, of course not. Obviously not. Right? But will they be back in the land having been brought there? Yes, they will. Well, guess what? This is the end, right? Nisan, Adar 29, is the end of 6 years, right? The Lord is coming at the end of 2300, which would be in Taurus, which is what? The 3rd month. Which is the 3rd month. The 7 years. Now, here's the thing. Will the 7 years of trumpets begin at Tishri 2032? Or will they begin at Tishri 2033? That's the thing that we still have to figure out. But what did we just see? Well, they're going to be bearing weapons for 7 months. For 7 months. So they're not going to start rebuilding right here in Tishri 2032 as the start of the 7 years, of trumpet judgments. So it would appear there's still something that's going to take us around into 2033 when that has been finished. And then, remember their hands, if they've touched the dead body, remember all that stuff, the priests and all that? Right? Then they can't observe Passover. They would have to wait and be cleansed, and then they would be able to get to second Passover. Maybe there's a connection to all of that. You see? Maybe there's that connection that brings it to 7 months later from Tishri before all these things can begin that we read in Haggai. But you know what's interesting about that? And this is just me speaking out loud, but we're going to have to go into this. You know where that brings us? It brings us into 2033. 2033, whether it starts at Nisan or whether it starts at Tishri for the 7 years of trumpet judgments, based on what we see of the 7 months of the bearing before the rebuilding and everything and start, that means the Lord's ministry begins what? Remember, the end of seals isn't that final year of seals isn't represented as the timing of the start of his ministry. He's defeating all the enemies, gathering the people, the great multitude, bringing them back, doing all that. And then what happens? Then the 144,000 are there with him on Mount Zion, and they will go out throughout the earth as evangelists during those 3.5 years while the city streets and temple then start getting rebuilt. Which would be what? 2,000 years from the end of his last ministry, which was about what? About 3.5 years, to his second half of his ministry, finishing the next 3.5 years from 2,000 years later, an exact count from 33 to 2033. And in 2033 would be the start of his 3.5 years of trumpets. The 3.5 years, 7 years of seals done, 3.5 years of trumpet judgments while he's there, and the city streets and temple being rebuilt. 3.5 years, ministry ends. 3.5 years, ministry starts from the end 2,000 years later. That gets very, very interesting. Right? So we've understood this now. We understood the Lord is there on Zion. It's all beginning. We can see the count to this. Now, let's bring more into this, what I was talking about in relation to the 8th day and stuff like that. Okay? We know that it's the month of Abib. I had a sister, one of our sisters in Jamaica, Faye, had sent me an email, and I hadn't considered this before, knowing what we've now are grounded in the understanding of Abib. Okay? We know it's the green ears of barley. And you know what's interesting about this? Is when people teach on this as to when Moses was in the wilderness, okay? Or really even before Moses went into the wilderness. Because Moses understood, I believe Moses understood the Abib, because when the Lord told them, they were still in Egypt. So I'm sure they would have seen the grain and everything else. And on top of that, the Lord obviously would have shown him something in the heavens and so forth, or Moses on his own would have looked up so that no matter where he was, he would know that that was the beginning of the year. Okay? But for us, the answer is Abib. But do you understand what some people believe is that, and it happens in our modern day, by the way. If you go to the beginning of spring when Abib is ready, and you look to where the sun, as the sun is rising on the horizon early in the morning, right before sunrise, you'll see Virgo going to set, and you'll see Spica, which is the Abib Bardi, we're told. And so you can understand that in our modern day. But when she was asking me about it, I went to go look, and it equaled that in our modern day. But guess what? Our modern day is Pisces. If we went back to Moses's day, spring was in Taurus, as we've showed 100 times. Spring was in Taurus. So when he told them in Exodus 12 that this was the beginning of your years and the beginning of your months, that it was Abib, then we know, because it was Taurus historically back then, because of the precession of the equinoxes, if you go to the from the 6th to the 7th month from Taurus, you're 2 months past already where Virgo would be. Which means in Moses's day, he wouldn't have looked up as the sun was about to rise. He would not have seen the Aviv barley in Virgo's hand at the horizon on the other side going down before sunrise. It only happens in our day. It wouldn't have happened in his. So whatever it was he looked at, it definitely related to Taurus that he would have seen in its position. But we have the answer given to us by Abib. And I believe the reason we're given Abib is because as the precession of the equinoxes took place, we would always be able to track it, excuse me, by green ears of barley being ready. So with that being said, and knowing what we know about Deuteronomy 16, I was just telling my wife the other day, side note, squirrel, I was in the car the other day and talking about the stuff with my wife and how we've shown, for a while now, that Deuteronomy 16 is the revelation of the end of days. It is the the pre-connected to Feast of Weeks that has to be observed 4 months early. That is the 7 days as 7 years for unleavened bread. That is the 7 days for 7 years of tabernacles, and the 8th day being the Jubilee as the new beginning. And it's wild because it's what? If we go top to bottom and we read it, it's 717, right? But we know the Jews say if you read it in reverse, it goes 7 tabernacles, 1, 7. But what's so fascinating is it looks like we said last time, like God's name. God's name in the Hebrew, if we look at it and they go right to left, it looks like 717. It looks like 7,17. And it's like the 7, of tabernacles, that doesn't happen first. It's going to be the 1 first, then the 7 of seals as unleavened bread, and then the 7 of tabernacles as the final 7. It's so wild that the revelation of it all is revealed in his name, just as it's laid out in Deuteronomy and as it's laid out in the creation of everything. From the beginning of the creations to the differences in the discourses, the gospels, it's crazy wild. It's just, the deeper you go, the more you realize and you see these connections, man, it's incredible. So as we got this here with the bead, let's see if it's understood this year. Let's make sure, or let's see if we can understand that where we are in 2025 is that the count is correct to get us to 11,9,9,11, and the Lord coming here in 2026. I haven't looked at this for a long time because I was never fully sure if Abib, was really the way to count the beginning of the year. And now we know it. So it's called renewedmoon.com, and the Aviv barley was positive. And all of the criteria from Scripture was there. Okay? So it was on time, just as the Hebrew calendar is this year. And you can come to their wall calendar that they have for the first biblical month, and you can see right here the renewed moon, so the sliver of the moon confirmed in Jordan, Israel, on the evening of March 30th, 2025, with the positive barley report, and here's the beginning of the year. Well, that's exactly what we have in 2025, just so you guys can see it. You see? This period right here. So it's on track. It was ready on time. And with that being understood, we can know and count based on the Hebrew calendar and understand, as we said last time, there could be a day or so of adjustment within a month because of where the moon actually shows up compared to where they pre-have it set. All right? So we're now on track. We're at it. We're looking at this time. Here we are in 2025, just under 10 months to go. Let's confirm this one more time. Let's confirm that there really can't be any more years. Okay? We know that the house of Israel, or Israel, when they came into the land in 1948, that is gone and over with. There's no possible count in Leviticus that counts it. And that's why the revelation of the calendars was so awesome, because we know the sowing and reaping of Leviticus 25 is connected to when they came into the land that the Lord gave them. But in Leviticus 19, it's the land talking about Jerusalem. We know that they got Jerusalem as their capital in around spring of 1950, and it was about April, but all these things had to be approved and signed off and agreed on, which happened in April, maybe just a little after April, and it was now their capital in 1950. So they came into the land in 1950 and sometime in spring. It was their official capital, and the Lord tells them, not only when you come into the land, but when you come into the land, you have to plant all manner of trees for food. The New Year of Trees didn't happen until, I think, late January or so of 1951. So they plant in January of 1951, and then at Nisan 1, because it's a year count. Nisan 1 of 1951 begins year 1. So now you've got to wait 3 years where they can't take of the fruit. So to 52 completes 1, to 53, to 54. So to Nisan 1954 completes 3 years. The 4th year, they're to give it to the Lord. That brings it to 1955. Nisan of 1955, 4 years complete, plus from when they came in and they had to plant. But now we got one more thing. Of course, the reason we were looking to this year in 2025 was because we believe this ended it, the 4 and then the 70 after they've planted. But we suddenly realized that there's probably a reason for a mention of the 5th year and not just saying from that year forward, everything is then theirs. We see that there is in the 5th year, you shall eat the fruit thereof. Okay? So I had always read this, like I said in the last teaching, just to recap it and let everybody see the count. I believe this was saying, well, this is the start of the 70 years. But then why mention it as its own separate year instead of just saying it's now theirs going forward? And so I looked at it as this being then the start of the 70 years, which is why 2025 in Aquarius was the time we were looking to. And then there was the above portion and Nisan 1, bang, that starts the 14 years. But that time has come and gone. And it turns out we have one more year being mentioned, and we saw that the rest of the verse said that it may yield unto you. Meaning they have to eat it in the 5th year. It's going to be theirs to eat in the 5th year so that it could yield unto them the increase thereof. Meaning this was all part of the process that they had to do so that from that time forward, they would receive the increase of it. This is why I was so excited, because not only do we understand the month and the timing of when the Lord is coming, because the Bible told us, but this makes it the final option in every single possible count from when the land he gave unto them to the land of Jerusalem when it became their capital. This would make it to 1956 Nisan. 1956 Nisan, right? I don't know if that was the exact date, but that is the date for 2026. So Nisan of 1956 plus 70 years is Nisan of 2026. And Nisan 1, 2026 is March 19th, 2026, which is very interesting because it just so happens that that's the time of the equinox, right at the beginning of it, right? Right where the count is. I thought that was interesting as a side note. Do you realize this is the end, right? That makes this the last day, right here or right in here. This is the end of 70 years, and it's the end of every other possibility we can possibly look to based on what Scripture has revealed as we have combed through it, diligently seeking and searching from beginning to end. That's the end of it. Hello. That's great news, brothers and sisters. So it doesn't sound like great news when you say there's about 10 months before we get to the pre-trib, a little under 10 months. But it is absolutely great news because there's no possible count left. That is glorious news. That's why I was so excited. I was so excited from so many things throughout the years. I was blown away by the revelation of Numbers 24 because it completed the story of the tribes that we knew. But finally having a no bars final year count possibility in the midst of all the craziness we've been watching going on around the world, this is exciting like no time ever before. An excitement like I haven't had this type of, oh my goodness. Am I ready, Lord? Are we ready, Lord? Help us bring in more. Help us reach more, Lord, in this time that remains. There ain't nothing left. There ain't nothing left to count. That makes it exciting, guys. And with this count, being this additional time that brings us here, let me bring it to a wrap with this. This 8-day conversation, 8-year talks. I want to show you something. You guys will remember this. Oops. We've taught on this many, many times, and we just talked about it a little while ago. This difference, as we've shared in teachings, we got separate teachings on this. In the story of the Transfiguration in Luke compared to Mark and compared to Matthew. We just touched on it a little while ago. But you'll remember this. I have taught on this numerous times, and great revelation. I mean, even the latest one that revealed why the wording before it, right? You guys remember that? Why the wording before the Transfiguration in Luke is what it is compared to what Mark says, compared to what Matthew says with nothing. It is so mind-blowing to understand that even the way the chapters were chosen by the Spirit who led these men to lay it out was done the way it was. It is all prophetic, and we can prove it every time. So not only in the differences of the Gospels that we talk about in the intro, but the way chapters are even laid out in the Gospels is absolutely mind-blowing. And we've done it with more than one chapter in each. It's been numerous times. It's wild. But you guys will remember this. We know that Mark after 6 days is prophetically a picture of after 6 years. In the prophetic, go search it up. You'll see it everywhere. Days can be represented as years. It even tells us in Scripture. And when you go to Matthew, it also says after 6 days or after 6 years. Mark's is, of course, what we've been talking about, the after 6 years of seals, and Matthew's is the after 6 years of trumpets. Okay? Both relating to the period of time of the coming of the Lord in different events and different things happening. But Luke's, do you guys remember? Those of you who have been around for a bit, what have I said about Luke's? I've been saying it for years. Luke says in 9:28, and it came to pass about in 8 days after these sayings. Okay? What do we talk about in the about in 8 days? It has a dual meaning. You remember that? It has a dual meaning. Okay? Now, do you guys remember how I've always taught this in relation about the 8 day, the about an 8 day having a dual meaning? Do you guys remember this? What is the Transfiguration story in Luke? Well, in Matthew, it's the Lord coming as lightning feet down on the Mount of Olives after 6 days or after 6 years. In Mark, it's the Lord coming after 6 days or after 6 years with heavenly Mount Zion, right? The mountain carved without hand, destroying the toes, all these things that we were just talking about earlier. Well, what's Luke's? It's the coming of the Son of Man to begin his 40 days, as we were just talking about, in Aquarius. And his coming for the 40 days begins what? On the 8th day, okay? About an 8th day, so sometime in the 8th day. We've taught on that numerous times, and that's the first of the two things we've talked about. How do we show it? John chapter 20, right? John chapter 20 is one. When the Lord returns, what does it say? After 8 days. So you guys know the story of John chapter 20, the typology of the bride being taken, him coming back the same day at evening, anointing the new modern day apostles in the typology of the end of days, and then he's gone. And when does he return? He returns after 8 days again. Okay? So he's returning again after 8 days. Okay? Anew once more. After a bit, look at this. Amid So it's like we've always said, he's not coming after 8 days. It's the conversation of after these things, after this on the 8th day, he's coming. He's coming amid the 8th day. What do we see in Luke 9? That about in 8 days, because it's going to be what? In the midst of the 8 days. What about when we've shown this in the story of Luke in order, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4? John the Baptist is the typology of the remnant Elijah workers, right? That remnant group we were just talking about, the Smyrna group, the group chosen from among Luke. They represent the John the Baptist and the Elijah group. When does their time begin? On the 8th day. What's the 8th day? The 8th day is when the Lord returns to begin his 40 days. So when we go to Luke chapter 2 and we see the typology of the birth of Christ and the 40 days start, the prophetic type going from Luke in order is on the 8th day. Then you've got the 40 days starting. Of course, Luke 3 is the end of seals. Luke 4 is the end of trumpets. We've got a teaching on that as well. And when does it start? The 8th day. You see? So we're seeing this connection everywhere. We've shown that it relates to the 8th day. So when we come, again, going back to Luke chapter 9, I have been teaching for years, and it's never changed, that this about in 8 days is the 8th day. Okay? The about in 8 days. Look, if were, as if, so like. So it's in the midst, around somewhere in that 8th day. And it lines up with everything we have taught prophetically of the Son of Man coming after the 7-day wedding to begin his 40 days on the 8th day. But do you know what else I used to teach? And I always taught until this today, that this also equals what? About an 8th year. Because remember, it has a dual meaning. It's about an 8th year. Just like Mark's is after 6 days as years and Matthew's after 6 days as years, Luke's has a dual meaning of about an 8th day because he's coming for his 40 days in this typology starting on the 8th day. So it has a fulfillment as days in the prophetic, but it also has a fulfillment as years, as the first 7 easy years coming to an end. Okay? That's what it's talking about. But do you guys remember how I've always taught it? I've always taught it as what? There's 7 easy years that we talk about, but just before the 7 easy years are over, right? Just before the 7 easy years are over, there's going to be 50 days, which means I was saying what? That it's not quite the 8th year. I would always say it's close. It's close to the 8th year starting. So we're still in the 7th year, right near the end of it. But do you realize that's the opposite? And I caught this a couple times over the years, but I didn't understand it any other way. That's the way it made the most sense. So do you understand what I just said? One is it's telling us it's sometime on the 8th day. Yet when I go to the year count, I'm saying it's the tail end of the 7th, not quite the 8th day. How did that make any sense? How can it represent a meaning of days being sometime on the 8th in the midst, like we saw, being in the midst of the 8th day, yet I'm going to the year count and I'm saying it's not even the 8th day, it's the tail end of the 7th, almost the 8th. That's not the same. Wouldn't it make more sense if it was in the midst of the 8th day when he comes to start his 40 days, which we absolutely can prove that it is? Then why wouldn't the year be in the midst of the 8th year? Hello. Let me show you what I mean. We've even got the places in Scripture that show it. What about Genesis chapter 7? Do you remember where I proved this duality in Luke as days and as years in the prophetic still? Yet the Mark and Matthew in the prophetic are only as years? Do you remember that? Genesis chapter 7. What did it say? Verse 4. For yet 7 days. And then what does it say? Verse 10. And it came to pass after 7 days. This 7 days and this 7 days are the same conversation of the same 7 days being spoken about. But when you go to Genesis chapter 8, there's 2 more 7 days. Stayed yet 7 other days, and stayed yet 7 other days. This one is not this one. This is 1 more 7 days, and this is its own next 7 days. This is the one for Mark after 6 days, meaning sometime the 7th. Then you got Matthew's after 6 days. This is sometime the 7th. Okay? It's the after 6 years, sometime in the 7th year. After 6 years of trumpets, sometime in the 7th year. And we've showed the revelation of it. Here's the great multitude with the leaf or the branch, the wild olive branch that's now being plucked off. That's the great multitude at the end of seals that goes to paradise when the olive branch, the wild one here, is being plucked off and taken in plucked off, which is the word for rapture, to pluck, right? But let's go back to what we're talking about now with Luke. Excuse me, as my voice is cracking. In verse 4 and 10 of Genesis 7, I've been teaching for years on this, that these 2 7s being the same are giving us the same picture that Luke is in its duality, being that it's days and it's years. Okay? And yet in Mark and in Matthew, it's only the days representing years. And in chapter 8, the 7 days and 7 days, they're both representing only years, and they're both only used once, one for Mark and one for Matthew. But the one for Luke is mentioned twice. So if it's mentioned twice, and we know that the one for days, it says after 7 days, and it's also years, then how can these 7 days be after 7 days, and I'm saying it's before 7 years? You follow what I'm saying? Those of you who have been around for a bit know what I'm saying. I'm showing you that what I believe was the 50 days that come before the 14 years, I'm saying that that must be still in the 7 years before the 14 years start, that it must be in the first 7 years and not in the 8th year. But then I'm saying one is still partly in 7 and the other one is sometime in the 8th, where everything else around it is saying in the midst of the 8th after 7. Well, guess what? The fact that it's not 2025 and that it is 2028 puts us in the 8th year. Do you guys know what the 8th year is? Do you guys know how that works? What are we talking about? 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. There's only one thing that works on 7s, guys. Leviticus 25. From when they came into the land that he gave unto them. Coming into the land that he gave unto them is a sowing and reaping count from Tishri to Tishri, not a year count. What we're looking at in the 7s, like what we're looking at in Genesis with the 7s, is the counting of 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 6, 7, the rest, 6, 7, the rest, 6, 7, the rest, 7, 7, 7, 7. It's always a cycle of 7s. There's a continuous cycle of 7 days of a week. 7 Sabbaths, right? The 7 Sabbaths, 7 weeks. And then 50 days. Do those 50 days not have 7, 7, 7, 7? Yeah. It never stops being 7s. which means the count is from what? Tishri. Tishri. Do you understand what that means? If we're counting by sevens, not by years. Remember, there's 2 calendars now? There's the years count. There's the years count side, and there's the Sabbath count side, which always goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It never stops. But this is a counting of years on this side. We are looking at a revelation as we put this together, and I'm gonna fix this up. But remember, there's a side of sevens and there's a side of years. Yes, next year, 2026, is the final option, which would end the 7 years at Nissan. But guess what? Remember what I said? If we don't touch, I think it's this. No. Remember what I said? Here's the one I'm going to be working on. Remember what I said? We're not going to touch the Sabbath side because I believe there's no way to change that. It's possible, but as I see it now, there's no way to change the Jubilee from Tishri of 39 to Tishri of 40 based on when Christ declared it in Luke chapter 4 and the timing of Luke chapter 3 from the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar being 29 AD. Meaning by the time Jesus made the decree, it would have had to have been 30 AD. So watch what happens. This calendar has been adjusted on this side, but not all the wordings of these things, okay? So we know the 70 years is going to end at Nisan. We know the 50 years are coming before the end of the 70, but the 70 count is not the side of sowing and reaping 77777. You see what I'm saying? We're still counting years over here from a Nisan to Nisan. There is no sowing and reaping counting on Nisan to Nisan. But on the sowing and reaping side, there's a continuous cycle of sevens. And if we keep that cycle from the believed time of the decree based on the revelation of Luke 3 and Luke 4 and on the history of Tiberius Caesar's 15th year, then that would mean what? Not changing, not having changed the sowing and reaping side, it would mean, as we said, that we are right now in a 7th year Sabbath. From Tishri of 2024 to Tishri of 2025. Okay? So until Tishri of 2025, which starts right here, we are in a Sabbath year. And from this point, in late September to October, would begin a new cycle of sevens. Okay? Which means by the time Nisan comes and the 50 days before, we would be in the earlier, getting close to the midst of what? The first year on the sevens side of the new cycle of sevens. Okay? Do you understand what that means? Remember, if the 8th day, okay, the duality in Luke chapter 9, that the 8th day is fully understood as being sometime on the 8th day when he returns from the wedding, which comes after 7 days, which means he's coming on the 8th day, and the duality is for years. And I was saying it was the tail of the 7th year, not sometime in the 8th. Well, what if they were both lined up to be sometime in the 8th day at some point in the 8th year, in the cycles of sevens, which isn't from a year's count, like the Nisan 70 years, but in a sowing and reaping count. That means it would have to be sometime in the 8th year so that they would both be aligned to being in the midst of the 8th day and in the midst of the 8th year. And it would align with what we've understood and taught on from Genesis for yet 7 days, and after 7 days being when he starts his 40 days, also being when he's coming, being in the midst of the 8th in a cycle of years after 7. Hello? Do you know how that 1 equals 8? You guys have all heard it before. Let's go to the Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Tabernacles, we'll go to Leviticus 23. The Feast of Tabernacles, excuse me. The Feast of Tabernacles is what? It's a 7-day feast, right? Okay? The Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days unto the Lord. 7 days shall be an offering made, and listen to this. On the 8th day shall be the holy convocation. Now, prophetically, we know from Deuteronomy and from all the Revelation, this is the prophetic picture of the new beginning of the Jubilee, represented as the final 7 years of trumpets, and then the new beginning being the Jubilee, okay? And the beginning of the millennial reign. But what is this? 7 days, and then the 8th day. If we go to Tabernacles, let's go to Tabernacles. Here's Tabernacles right here. It's 7 days, right? And then the 8th day. So if this is day 1, day 2, 3, 4, 5, or actually this would be the Sabbath, okay? But there's 1 day, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What would be the 8th day? First day of the week, right? What do? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or we don't even do it in order, right? We say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's 7 days. So what's Monday? It's day 1 of the next 7. But what can it also be called? The 8th day, right? If this was the beginning of the month, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this would be the 8th day. But what is it also? It's also the first day of the next week. Because in the cycles, there is no changing from a sowing and reaping. The sowing and reaping is continuously, where do I want that? The sowing and reaping is continuously a cycle of 7s. So if him coming for 40 days is on the 8th day after the 7-day wedding, then that would mean the about in 8 days as years would mean sometime in the 8th year based on cycles of 7. So you've got the days coming here and you've got the years coming here, which would mean after 7, the first year of the next 7 is also referenced as the 8th. And when would it equal? Look at that. Sometime in the 8th day after the 7-day wedding, in sometime in the 8th year after a new cycle of 7s being the 8th year. I think we're on to something. I think we're on to something. And I'm going to be going through this chart again, as I told you. I'm going to go look at all the study and the notes that our brother Jake went through. And you know, it reminded me, because when we had put this together, when all this started coming about of the 2 calendars last year with Ivan, our brother Ivan believed that we couldn't be in a Sabbath, that we had to be in the first year for this all to begin. So he believes that the count was difference by 1 year, and that this was the 7th and this would be year 1. So we were off in our agreement by 1 year. Well, now it turns out that it would be off by 2 and we would have been difference by 1. And it actually works out into the understanding, maybe not the years where he had it, but mine wasn't. Well, we'll find out if what we had here is correct. But he was correct in his thinking now, in realizing that we had to be in a sowing and reaping year 1 before this could happen. Now, I don't know if he understood it in the Luke correlation, but now we have some evidence. We now have some biblical evidence with 8th day to 8th year being after 7 before these things both line up, proving out Luke 9 and proving out Luke 9 both being on the 8th day and in the 8th year. I love it. I thought that was super exciting. I had to share it with you guys because it falls directly in line with what we were looking at. So I think we're going to discover a lot more to be able to really now align this and see if it needs to be brought up one or not. But so far, it doesn't look like it will need to be brought up, which means there's going to be adjustments in how this was understood or believed to be understood already, but not by much. But it will probably help in the alignment of the shortening of the days. Aha. All right. We'll see how all that plays out going forward. I don't have any more information than that at this point. But watch this. Let's now bring this to an end. And let's remember this now, that if we are in a Sabbath year right now, and the sowing begins here, this was, I think, part of Ivan's point to me when he talked about this before, is I believe that the fact that we were in a Sabbath and the fact that this isn't going to happen at actual harvest time made sense, because there wouldn't be a harvest because it was supposed to be a Sabbath. So there shouldn't be a harvest for wheat because it's happening 4 months early anyways. But Ivan's point was it would have to be in year one, if I understood correctly, that it would have to be year one because there is a reaping that's supposed to take place. And when we go to that in John chapter 4, well, that's what it says, right? Jesus tells them, look, you guys say that the reaping is going to be ready. The harvest is ready in 4 months. Well, if Jesus is telling them that the harvest is going to be ready in 4 months, then obviously Ivan was correct, even though it's happening 4 months early where there isn't the harvest of wheat. He's telling them that there would be a harvest of wheat where they're expecting it to be ready. And that was Ivan's point of saying that it shouldn't be a Sabbath year, but there needed to be a sowing before a reaping can happen at this point, at the time of the Feast of Weeks. However, Jesus is saying it's going to happen 4 months earlier. Hello. So I'm sure we'll be chatting with him a little bit more about that too, and working as people start putting in their insights and messaging in relation to how this might play out for those that are tracking this. All right. So now, as I finally bring this to an end, we're going to see this understanding of this 8th year. Okay. And now we can understand, because we have 2 calendars and both playing simultaneously, we'll be able to tweak out these things to understand them more clearly. And let's see with this if we can understand something else leading us into a picture of the 8th day. Okay? Watch this. Remember this in Luke 21? There's the escape one, right? Luke 21:36, which we should be praying every night. I prayed over you guys and over my family and your families. Watch ye therefore, and pray always that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. And you remember this? Let me show it in eSword, because it's so clear. Okay? Watch this. Watch this, watch this. I got so many highlights on it. This one always takes a long time to open. Okay? Watch this. Of course, the discourse is very different than Mark and Matthew's, but then we get black letter words only in Luke's ending his discourse. And in the daytime was he teaching in the temple, in the night he went out in a boat in the mount that is called Olives, and all the people came early in the morning to him in the temple for to hear him. Well, if you guys remember, John chapter 8 starts with the same wording. And Jesus went into the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again unto the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And then look at what we see. The woman taken adultery, right? This is the story of the Gentile bride that we've talked about many, many times over the years in John chapter 8. And then look what happens. We talked about the stone's throw, which is an event that's going to be taking place during the 7-day wedding. And then what do we see? Then the Lord coming, check this out. Then here comes the Son of Man for 40 days, the darkness and the light that we've shared so awesomely, so spirit-led, and showing where these are, proving the timing of Christ every single time for his 40 days. Check it out. What chapter are we in? We're like 12 verses down into chapter 8. We're 12 verses down into chapter 8. We have the wording from the timing of the escape in Luke chapter 21. We have the picture of the Gentile bride and the woman standing before him. We have the events, this typology of the wedding, and then the coming of the Son of Man to begin his 40 days. And they're all in chapter 8 of John. They're all in chapter 8 of John. Chapter 8 of John, in the typology, in the prophetic picture of the chapters to years, John chapter 8 is a picture of what? John chapter 8, to us in the revelation of the open books, is the beginning, is the 8th year. Ta-da. It's the 8th year, right? Chapters, 2 years. It's the 8th year from the 7 easy and then the 8th year, right? Well, do you know what I think it's also proving? That John's count of his chapters to years are a Tishri to Tishri count. Right here, we have what we've just been talking about, which is the 8th year and 8th day being in the 8th year on the Tishri to Tishri side of counts, which means what? From tabernacles to tabernacles count, right? The fall feast to the fall feasts, which means the 7th or year 1, the 8th day, 8th year, year 1 count will have already started in the fall feasts of 2025. Well, guess what? If we go to John chapter 7, I talked on this before, even though I didn't fully comprehend how it was taking place. What is John chapter 7 all about? John chapter 7 is about the Feast of Tabernacles, the fall feasts, the timing of the fall feasts and the beginning of sowing before reaping, right? It begins with tabernacles, which is the timing then of the sowing and reaping, which would begin right here, which means John chapter 7 being the connection to sowing and reaping side, meaning 7 years in the sowing and reaping need to come to an end. And from this count, we will get to John chapter 8, which is the first year on a sowing and reaping side, and in it is the pre-trib bride of Christ and the 7-day wedding and the Lord's return on the 8th day in the 8th year. That's pretty awesome. I don't know about you, but that was awesome. That to me now lines up and makes so much more sense. What was needed to understand this? We needed, since the mere revelation last year, we absolutely needed this revelation of 2 calendars working together. And now we can see that it appears, at least at this point, that John, in his chapters to years, is speaking about sowing and reaping count, revealed in John 7 to 8 in the revelation of chapters to years, lining up with Luke chapter 9 in the duality of the Lord beginning his 40 days on the 8th day, making the 8th day as years in the 8th year. Remember how we got to this count? We applied the count of a Nisan count. Remember that? We applied how we got the revelation from 2023, and we're looking to 2024 at the true counting of the Feast of Weeks. We applied that same count in 2024. In the fall of 2024, we applied the same Nisan count to a Tishri count, which is how it began in the beginning. When there was no Nisan to start the year, everything began from a sowing and reaping perspective until the Lord told them in Exodus chapter 12. You remember this conversation. And then it became from Nisan to Nisan, a spring to spring. The years count then began. Whereas prior to, it was sowing and reaping years. So the way we got to this count, that leads us to the revelation of 2026 and led us to 2025, but also now to 2026 with that final year, is a count that we did starting from a sowing and reaping count. A sowing and reaping count is what got us there. But I was doing that count in a Sabbath year. When we do that count in a year 1, 8th year, we have our sowing, and the reaping for the wheat doesn't happen until the summertime, right? Very late spring, early summer, which would be right here. Which would be right here, except for the Lord saying it would be 4 months early, bringing it back to the above portion 4 months earlier in Aquarius, so that we would be just before the 70 years are over in a calendar count of years, and after 7 in the 8th year or first year of the next set of 7. And to this, we can align now that piece that was a little bit mysteriously off in Luke and a dual revelation to Genesis and the Gospel of John from chapter 7 into chapter 8. Brothers and sisters, I hope this sets you on fire. I hope this excites you. It was power-packed. It even recharges me, and I was excited to give it already. I'm even more energized now. Like I said, I know the little under 10 months isn't exciting, but knowing it's the final option for all the year counts, seeing what this does in this adjustment and what it brings to light, and then having the teaching of the Gog, Magog, and to clearly see it and understand it for yourselves, that it is only revealed perfectly in a 14-year tribulation. Brothers and sisters, it is awesome. God is good. His Spirit is absolutely, unequivocally leading just as much as ever before. And for anybody who's new, who hasn't yet gone into the first 4 teachings of this intro series, I recommend it to you now more than ever. And for anybody who can support, check out our links in any of these places. And if you're able, support the ministry, and let's bring tons more with us, whether to prepare workers or whether to prepare people for the kingdom of God in the third heaven. Brothers and sisters, I love you always. I'm grateful for each of you. I pray for you and yours always. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.